Good to see you again, and welcome to the day 2 of the GAN program. Next generation sustainable alternative proteins for food, fundamentals and technological innovations. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the global trends and the market opportunities in alternative proteins. I must mention that this is not one of my favorite topics to teach because I'm a scientist. I like teaching science, but it's very important topic because without market, in most cases, as a food scientist, for us, it's very difficult to do research and development. Do you agree? Food science is often considered as an applied discipline in science. Why? Because we talk about manufacturing of food, we talk about modification of food, we talk about creating of new food and so on. Why are we doing this one? For the benefit of society, right? Somebody has to eat the food we have created. Somebody has to eat the taste we have improved in particular food, for example, right? There should be some consumer who should wish to have the protein or any other food matrices we have created. There should be a market for that. So without market, I am always saying that maybe our discipline is it will be very challenging situation for us, though we do some fundamental research in food science and technology. All right, now I'm going to talk a little bit about what are the global market trend and where are we today with respect to alternative proteins. And this is one of the nice figure I got it from a review article from Annual Reviews in Food Science and Technology, which clearly nicely illustrates where are we at the moment and where we are going to be in the future when it comes to alternative proteins. Now we can see that we are actually somewhere in this particular region, according to me, and the current place, starting from let's say 1980s to let's say this is 2020 if ish 2025 now. So we are in this particular region at the moment. As I mentioned, soy is one of the most well established so-called alternate. I don't call it as an alternative proteins, but it's one of the most established alternative plant-based proteins. The structure is well known, the functionality is well known, and it has been used in numerous products, and that is currently available in the market. Soy protein isolates, for example, soy protein concentrate, for example, have been used in numerous products. I'll give some examples later in some of my slides. And something also being done with pea, and I mentioned that considering the sustainability issues with soy and soy production and soy processing and problem with the traceability of soy-based products. Now people are more leaning towards pea as an alternative plant-based proteins. And it's also important that to mention that soy and pea cannot be grown everywhere in the world. There are some regions they can grow soy, there are some regions they can grow pea, and depending on the local cultivation tendencies and the things will change. For example, in Europe, for example, let's say you can grow more rapeseed. That means they try to valorize how we can use rapeseed proteins. If you come to Americas, they grow a lot of soy, and then they think about how I can use soy and soy based proteins in their products. That varies from region to region, just to let you know. It's not very universal. In India, if you say that, okay, we produce a lot of millets, we produce a lot of moong, probably we need to start using moong based proteins or millet based proteins. So it varies. It's very important to mention that when it comes to market, we produce something, we consume in the local region, and there is also an opportunity for transporting into some other part of the world. And then it sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's challenging because transportation always brings another environmental footprint because it has to go through the flight, it has to go through the ships. Again, there is an environmental footprint. So we always have to think in sustainability point of view, grow locally and use locally. Probably that is more environmental friendly, and that's one of the approaches within the sustainable developmental goals. So we need to think about local sources and local utilization of food and food ingredients. Does that make sense? So in the future, so we are going in this direction. So I could not cover the fungal sources, but I had some slides, but we had some time constraint. But I'll cover about fungal sources of proteins in one of my future lectures. So in the future, we are also going for fungal. But I don't say that we are not using fungal today. We are using, for example, there is called corn product. fusarium species that produces a lot of single cell proteins, extremely good in the essential amino acid composition, low amount of mycotoxin. So it's already in the market, especially in UK, and there are 10 different countries apparently selling fungal based products as a meat alternative. So it's already in the market, but there is more opportunities using different kind of fungal sources to produce single cell proteins, and this is where we are heading in the future. And in next let's say 5 to 10 years, I'm not very sure, this is a number game, it's very difficult to say when we're going to eat algae completely, but it might be 5 to 10 years or 10 to 15 years. So we're going to use mostly algal based or insect based or other kind of proteins in the future. I don't say that algal proteins are not available. It's available. For example, spirulina is commercially sold in many parts of the world. Algal ingredients are also available, but the biggest challenge is that it's not universally available. Why? Because every country has their own regulations. So we can't sell every product in every countries. Every countries will have their own food regulation bodies, and they have a strict rule on, okay, are you able to market this particular product to my people? They say no, it's not possible because our laws are not accepting these kind of proteins, and there is a glitch, there is a market problem here. So things are not universal yet. It is actually varies from local government to local government. Just to say an example, European Union has their own regulations. There is EFSA, European Food Safety Authority, and they have their own regulations. And basically you can't sell every product in Europe. For example, they have this novel food categories. They say that, okay, if this protein comes from this particular species, no, you can't sell it. Only this protein coming from this particular species can be sold in European market, and with the label called novel foods or novel protein, something like that. So it varies from country to country. Does that make sense? So it's not a universal truth that the protein can be sold everywhere. It changes. All right, so now I'll talk a little bit about some number games. So I'm not very 100% sure that these numbers were 100% correct, because I'm not a market specialist. I have taken it from the internet, from the reputed sources, for example, but I still believe it's a good number, at least for the approximation. So the market value today for the alternative proteins around 90 billion US dollar. That's a big number, but it's not an extremely big number. Why? Because if you take a, let's say, meat market in general, even today the meat market is around 1000 to 1500 billion dollar. It's around 10 to 15 fold higher than the alternative protein market. So we are going in this direction, but we haven't matched with the meat or dairy. Dairy is, I think, around 1000 billion dollars, something like that. So we are about 10-fold lower when it comes to alternative proteins, but still it's a big number according to me. 10 is not a small number to say, right? And the US is one of the largest producers and consumers of alternative proteins. It's around 12 billion US dollars. And the European Union has a lot of different countries like Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, and so on. They all together constitute around $67 billion. They are the second most consumers or producers of alternative protein, just to let you know. India is not yet in the top positions, but we are also going in this direction. There is some increased, apparently there was some research laboratory they're working on, for example, cellular agriculture, what we call that. You can cultivate meat on the petri dish. If you've studied biotechnology, animal biotechnology, animal cell culture, you've studied perhaps, and you can actually cultivate meat on a petri dish, and that can be eaten. Singapore has sold their first cellular agriculture product in a burger or something like that. So India is also going in that direction, but I don't have a specific number. Where are we at the moment in terms of alternative proteins? Okay. And when it comes to the market share, it's basically the plant-based is the majority one, and then food, and then the rest is, for example, the insect, microalgae, and other things are covering about 20-25%. So plant-based is still 75%. Its majority is plant-based. Okay. And when it comes to the market, food and beverage is highest one, and the small portion is going for the animal feed. It's basically we're using alternative proteins for the food purpose, not for the feed purpose. I hope you're sure that know what is different between food and feed, right? Feed is basically for animals, and food is for, we are also animals, but we are human, clever animals. So food is for us. So it's not redirected to feed. I have to mention this point very clearly, because if you redirect alternative proteins for feed purposes, then we again question the sustainability issue, because then we need to consume animals again for the same proteins, right? And then again we come back to the same loop. But in some cases, it's also used for the feed purpose. Let's say for insects and something, maybe you have to convert some bad protein into good protein. Bad protein in the sense the protein, let's say it's not digestible. Probably you can convert it into more digestible proteins by giving to certain animals, because they can biosynthesize high quality proteins. So we can again make them as a high quality proteins. Does that make sense? And this is an important point I want to mention, that why the today's consumers are looking for alternative protein sources. What is the driving force in them? The first one is that the health consciousness. How many of you think alternative or plant-based foods or plant-based proteins are healthier? Raise your hand. How many of you think that? There's one person, two, three, four, five, six. It's a lot, right? Almost like 60-70% of the classroom thinks plant-based proteins or plant-based foods in general are healthier. Maybe someone could elaborate. Why do you think so?
Sir, it uh, produces very less carbon footprint
Yeah,
compared to meat.
yeah.
That is the main thing. And obviously, it is cheaper than meat based.
So what he is thinking that coming back to our yesterday's lecture, I gave like 3 hours lecture saying that animal and animal husbandry is related to greenhouse gas emission, a lot of carbon footprint, environmental footprint here. So to avoid that, I want to eat more plant-based or more alternative sources. That's his feeling. I want to save the Mother Earth. That's super good. And he also mentioned that cost. So the second point, he thinks that the vegetables are less pricier compared to meat, at least in Indian context. I fully agree that. But if you come to Denmark, I'm always scared, because usually their chicken was much cheaper than the Indian grown vegetables. I can tell you that I could get 1.3 kilograms of chicken for, let's say, 40 to 45 Danish krona, and 1 kilogram of, let's say, Indian vegetable, let's say Karela, right? It was 75 Danish krona. Of course, it comes from India. Sometimes the price parity is different depending on from which country it originates and where it is being sold. In India, I know that the vegetables and fruits may be expensive. Vegetables are much cheaper than the animals, right? Probably I don't know about the ingredient market. That's another story. That's another group, because the whey proteins, I don't know whether it's equally priced as soy proteins, but soy proteins are much cheaper, if I'm not wrong, compared to milk-based proteins. So it varies. Good point. Yeah. Any other any other reason why do you want to go for plant-based stuff?
So, as per the human consciousness, I feel that they are having the meat based proteins, they are having negative emotional
Yes.
feelings
Yes. Yeah.
because animals are crying and we are slaughtering them, right?
Yes.
So, to have a positive, in fact, feeling of a food,
Yeah.
that matters a lot
Yeah.
for the Hindus people, I
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, right?
Yeah.
First thing is this, and second thing, it not only gives you the protein,
Mm-hmm.
it also provide you the active components and the other phyto nutrients,
Mm-hmm.
which are essential for the human body. Like it can be micro minerals also, it can be microvitamins also.
Mm-hmm.
So that comes means not only we are getting protein, but we are getting the protective nutrients as well.
Absolutely.
So
That is a very important point she has raised. That Thank you for that. What she thinks is that there is an emotion among ourselves. Okay, we need to save our animals. Animals in some regions, in some cultures, it's our sacred things. We don't want to slaughter them. We don't want to kill them, right? So there's a feeling. And you know that there's a huge global trend towards going towards vegetarianism and veganism and something like that. It's a huge trend. The young generation would like to completely change their dietary habits. Maybe they were born as a mixitarian or flexitarian or something like that, and now they want to become vegans because they have this ideology saying that okay, we don't want to harm the animals. Animals are not for the benefits of human beings. They have their own life, they have their own families. We don't want to disturb them. And the vegans don't want to drink even milk and milk-based products, right? That's another reason why there is a global trend towards plant-based and alternative proteins. And the second thing she mentioned that especially plants, microalgae, and also insects, they're not just protein sources. Sometimes they can also give bioactive compounds, especially plants produces secondary metabolites, let's say phenolic compounds, and let's say some kind of other metabolites, and they have an added advantages. You have to eat more fruits, not for the necessarily the proteins, because the protein content in fruits may be 2, 3, 4%. However, it contains some other components, anthocyanins. That's good for your body, right? Vegetables is not just for proteins, it contains other vitamins and trace minerals and so on. It's actually a complete food that we want to eat. And that's the reason why people have a tendency to go towards plant-based foods. Any other reason? The last one somebody wants to mention.
Good morning, sir.
Morning. Yeah.
Meat-based proteins have more fat content than the plant-based proteins.
Yes.
Means they rise the cholesterol level, which is not good for the body, and that can lead to many diseases, also like fatty liver or something. So I think that's why people are more growing attention towards the plants.
Exactly. So what she's mentioning, one of the another biggest reason people think that the meat-based proteins or meat in general, perhaps not so healthier if you continuously eat meat. That means every day you eat red meat, perhaps you have a problem because there are many studies confirms that that's again a debatable topic according to me, but still they confirm that if you eat meat continuously, you have cardiovascular diseases, increasing the cholesterol, and other diseases are associated with high meat consumption. However, the plant-based food consumption have a reduced health risks. So that's the reason why there's a trend towards plant-based and alternative. I think you have covered most of the things I really wanted to tell. So you guys are very clever. Right? Super. So I have written the points here. Just go through that one. These are the actual major region. If you do the consumer survey around the world, everybody says the same thing. I want to be healthier. I want to have a less carbon footprint. I want to save animals. I don't want to kill them. And these are the reasons why they go for most plant-based or alternatives in general. Okay. And now there is also a good belief among the audience that among the consumers that we have a good technological innovations. Earlier it was a problem because usually the plant-based purified proteins are not so tasty because they have this bitterness and they have this feeling in the mouth that has astringency, the dryness feeling and so on. If, as I said yesterday, if they do not taste good, nobody gonna buy that one. But today, the technology is going so fast, especially in food science. We are creating proteins that is more. I mean, they have a bland taste, means there is no taste in the. In principle, the protein should not have any taste to use it in a food ingredient because the taste comes in the later stage. We add some other ingredient to get the taste. So we are doing some technological innovations to remove these unwanted compounds, right? There are new technologies to create new kinds of foods. For example, we have 3D printing. Just to give an example, you can create jalebis with the protein ingredient with the 3D printing, right? You can create the foods that children like using 3D printing. There's a lot of technological innovations today, and that is actually helping us to have this plant-based in our daily plate. For example, the best example is we have milk-based, plant-based milk in the supermarket. We have meat analogs in the supermarket already. I'll show you so many pictures later. It's already in the market because that's a technology we use. For example, extrusion. I'm going to talk about that in next after couple of lectures. We can create the fibrous structure. It looks very like a meat in your mouth. It's all coming because of the food science and technology, right? And because of this reason, there is actually increased tendency to consume alternatives. Make sense? All right. So I will just keep. I have already mentioned this one. And this is the trend. You can see that where are we heading? And we are here around 90. And we are going to reach in 2034 about two folds, around 200 or 220 million US dollar. That's the billion US dollars. That's the market of the alternative. That's a predicted one. But what I wanted to mention that the trend is in this direction. It's not in this direction. Okay, it's going up and up. That's really good. Okay. Now, if you look into that, who are the largest consumers of alternatives? Again, it's the North America, Canada and the USA. They are the biggest, the largest consumers and also producers of plant-based or alternative proteins and protein-based ingredients and product. And then there is actually Australia, which is Oceania region. They're also a good market. And India and China and this Asian continent here, they're also in higher trend. But if you look into the South America and African continent and some part of Europe, is like yes or no kind of thing. Okay. I really wanted to show some pictures now. I think 2024, that was the last year, 2023. Before last year, I visited America to see their way of consuming plant-based or alternative proteins and where are they. So we placed a visit to California and we visited a number of companies that is producing plant-based alternatives. And I also visited a lot of supermarkets there to see what are they selling there. And beautiful thing that they are actually having a huge variety of plant-based alternatives. Just to give a shelf here, you can see that this is the alternative milk-based products, yogurt, plant-based milk. There's a you can have a number of varieties. There's a tons of varieties of milk, plant-based milk you can buy there. I don't think in the Indian supermarket we can get so many varieties today. I hope it will come in next 5-10 years. I don't know. But America is already there. One more picture here is that this is the alternative meat, and you have alternative chicken, and you have alternative burger patties, and this is called tacos. Everything is available. And this is the you can see that it's chicken breast piece. It is very similar, like in terms of its look, in terms of its texture. It was fantastic. We also tasted some food in the supermarket. They could cook and give us, and it was tasting also really good. And this is alternate. Some people who like eggs, so you have alternative eggs using the soy proteins actually. And this is the beef burger patties. If you go to McDonald's, you get a burger, and those patties again they can be made from plant-based here. And I think this is, can you see shrimps here? So this is and you can also see that red color layer on the shrimp. They could really mimic is like a very shrimpy texture and color, and also that bend shape of the shrimp. They could make it, and it also has a good amount of proteins and so on. And I could also take a, this is of course all the picture was taken by me. I don't have any copyright. So this is a coconut yogurt. But one of the things I found that there's a lot of cheese and yogurt and something, but they were all filled with fat, not much with proteins. That's the biggest challenge, I would say. They had a lot of coconut or other fat in the cheese especially. But usually the real cheese, let's say paneer in our case, it contains a lot of proteins, less fat. No, it has a fat, but protein is a major portion. But in this case, fat is the major portion. That's a problem. And this is burgers, and in Europe and in Americas, we eat a lot of this salmon. It's the most consumed fish. And we could also get salmon slices, which is purely plant-based. And I opened this packet, and I could cook there in the supermarket. They helped us to cook, and it basically had a very fishy flavor, but the taste was not good. I don't know today. I don't want to talk about it's recorded. I don't want to talk about this company, but the taste, I did not personally like the taste, but the flavor, the smell was really good, very fishy. But now they're trying to improve. Perhaps everybody's trying to improve the quality of their food product. I'm talking about in 2023. So these are the examples to show that at least in the US market, you find a lot of varieties already now, and people are consuming it. It's sold that much means they're consuming it. And then I also saw one. We went to another supermarket. In one of the supermarket, what they did was they actually had a separate plant-based section. You have a meat section, normal meat, dairy section, normal dairy, and you have a plant section, means there is only plant-based were put. And we went to another supermarket, and there they have actually mixed them. So you have a true meat and meat analogs. We have true milk and milk analogs, or plant-based milk. They all mixed it. We asked them, why did you do that one? Why can't you make it in a separate shelf? And then they say that, okay, the people who wanted to buy the meat one, now you directly see in front of your eyes the alternative. Now you probably pick that one. So that was a consumer, just to approach the consumer. So there is a huge research on also how we market the plant-based products. It's not, if you make a separate section, basically the meat consumers, I won't go that side at all. It's not my thing. But if you mix them, perhaps, okay, right, maybe I heard a lecture about plant-based. Oh, there's already a plant-based here. Maybe I'll try this today. They would grab that and come back. Oh, it tastes good. I'll buy it again. This is how the tendency, the trend will change. Does that make sense? All right. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the business landscape. This is one example for from this particular paper. They talk about the pea protein here, but it's the same thing for most of the plant and microalgal, whatever the proteins we're talking about. The trend is the same. We should start from the breeding here. So that I was mentioning that if you want to have high yielding varieties, you should change the breeding policies. Then it's farming, means what kind of fertilizers you use and what kind of environment you create for the plant to grow. And then there is a huge research on protein extraction that we're going to cover in my next lecture. Then about manufacturing, that means once you create the ingredients, you can't eat ingredients. You have to create cookies out of them, infant formula out of them, burgers out of them. Then there's a manufacturing industries, and then there is a selling industry. You produce something, then somebody has to sell it, and then the end day there's a consumer. It's a market trend. So start from the scratch where you start growing until you consume. There's a lot of market for this one. Somebody was talking about the startups yesterday with me, and I don't know where you place it yourself. It is not possible to cover entire value chain here. Maybe you are here, maybe you are here. To think about your interest in this particular value chain, and you can have a startup. I'm telling about startup because actually this is one of the biggest opportunities today to have a startup, alternative business. So these are the major players in the I think it's in the US, if I'm not wrong. For example, Beyond Might is a US one. So different companies are already involved in different different sectors of this value chain. Okay. So I don't know your interest for the future. If you want to have a business or if you want to join a company, find it where you fit the most. Okay. And just to showcase here, there's a lot of big companies already that are into the plant-based market. I hope you know some of them. And there's a lot of other. This is corn. This is basically the mycoproteins company. And Impossible Burger. Have you heard about it? This is one of the most sold plant-based meat analogs in the US. And they don't yet have market in the EU, if I'm not wrong. I'm not very sure. And remember that it's not about only the companies and startups. The most important thing is the regulatory bodies, because they control the production, processing, and also consumption, basically in the sense that you can't sell everything to everybody. There is somebody to control that one. For example, in India, we have FSSAI. US, you have FDA, and you have WHO in the UN nation, and the European thing is controlled by EFSA, European Food Safety Authority, and every local government has their own food safety authorities. Often FDA and EFSA make most critical evaluation about alternative proteins, and then basically they start giving the guidelines, and then it comes to market. Please note that it's not an easy way to get things to the market. We are talking about years, not about months. For example, when they produce this corn, I think they took 12 or 10 years of research. When they identified the strain until it comes to market took 12 years or something like that, 10 to 12 years. It's not quickly something will come to market because you have to do a lot of safety studies and so on. Just to highlight here that the market is again growing. Some companies have seen the rise in the double, triple, and so on. I can skip this because I already mentioned to this slides. Now it's about cost. When you say to produce a plant-based or an alternative, about 20% will go for the ingredients that you need. And then logistics about 5%, and research and development is 15%, because there's a different sectors you have to improve to get the high quality food products. So this is just a rough estimate. Okay. And that's all about markets and consumer acceptability of plant-based or alternative proteins. Did you understand something? I was a little bit quick. I wanted to be a little bit quick to considering the remaining lectures, but was I very fast? You got the point, right? Okay, let's try to summarize what did we learn in this particular lecture. Okay, so we learned that there is actually increasing tendency for consumption and production and consumption of plant-based or alternative proteins. Do you agree? That's what the chart clearly shows. That it says that now we are at the business of $90 billion. We might reach to 250 billion in next 20-25 years. That means that's a sharp rise. And statistics says that in most countries is raising around 10 to 16% rise every year. 10 to 16% rise we have. That's the statistics. Okay. And the most consumed alternative proteins is insect? No. What is that? Soy proteins or plant-based proteins are the most consumed alternative proteins, but there is a tendency towards microalgal and mycoproteins and so on, and also cultured meat in the future. Okay, and United States is one of the largest producers and processors of alternative proteins, and there is a big market there, and also in the EU and some part of Asia and also Australia. Okay, and there's a lot of companies already established for production, processing, marketing, consumption, and many aspects of alternative. There's a lot of companies, and if you really want to have a startup, I really recommend that there is a business here for you for the future. But you have to find out what is unique in your business. There's a lot of competitors for you already. A lot of startups. We visited more than 20 startups when we were in the US for alternative proteins. I also knew that in India also there's a lot of startups on alternative proteins. It's not something new for Indian context also. Okay, to summarize, the market is growing and consumers are there, but consumers really consume it because they want to save the environment, they want to save themselves, they want to save the animals. That's the three governing reasons why the consumers are leaning towards alternatives. Does that make sense?
When we talk about alternative protein-based products, does not just have a lot of preservatives, emulsifying agents, because protein, natural proteins, egg proteins, or any other proteins has this emulsification, or any other. We don't have to. We have to froze them.
Yeah.
In the deep freezer. But when we talk about this, does not it creating another one industry to bloom, like additive industry, lot of preservatives to be added to mimic the characteristics or the sensorial properties. Just now you mentioned them, some fish has been, flavor has been added in the plant salmon, where it is not naturally present.
No.
So are we not blooming, or are we not rising the other problems along with the alternative proteins, although it is sustainable?
Yeah.
But it is an increasing trend, means we are unnecessarily taking lot of other preservatives and additives.
Yes, I think it's one of the important questions for debate as well, right? And what she's raising the concern that okay, we are creating alternative proteins, but the protein themselves are not edible directly. We need to create some structures, we need to create some flavors out of them by adding some other XYZ ingredients. Basically, if you look into the alternative food matrix, maybe they are having a bunch of ingredients there, and maybe we want proteins, but we can't eat proteins directly, and the ingredients are improving their stability, flavor properties, and textures, and so on. And her question is that, are we damaging things here? Do they have some environmental footprint, and is it creating some new markets? That was the question. It's actually the debate we are doing at the moment. There is a problem. I completely agree. I recently got a project from the Danish ministry, about 6-7 million Danish krone, just to investigate how some of the ingredients we add to the plant-based foods actually damaging the proteins and creating some unwanted molecules, and probably they have a potential effect on our health. I'm particularly investigating how that affects the human brain and the digestive systems, and so on. It's actually something not very well investigated. It's a valid point, actually. The biggest challenge today is that the food industries are more thinking about flavor and texture because they want to market. Flavor and texture is extremely important to sell the product. However, I don't say they're less concerned, but there is a less research on the toxicology. There's a less research on the nutritional unwanted benefits of this plant-based or other alternatives. There's a less research on, let's say, allergenicity that they are creating. So it's actually an area that we need to dig deeper into. It's very difficult to give a right answer and wrong answer, in the sense we don't know. That's the right answer, I would like to say. The ingredients definitely help. I completely tell you that. Without food processing, no food can be sold. We keep it one thing in mind. There's always something running in among the consumers that, oh, processing is bad, ingredients are bad. No, that's not true. We need to process the food. That's a part of every food. You cook, right? It's very rare that you eat something raw, except vegetables and fruits. Most of things are cooked. There is always processing. Food has to be processed, because when you process, you can store it for a long period. Nobody can eat food just you cook and eat in 5-10 minutes. No, it's not possible. They want to put it in the supermarket. The consumer has to finish his job and come in the evening, and then you have to grab it from the supermarket. It has to be stored. So then, if you want to store it, you have to add preservatives. It's a part of the game. I don't say everything is bad, ingredients are bad, but the question is, to what proportion um, they are damaging. The benefit versus harm. You need to find that balance. Research is going on. There's no right answer here at the moment. Hope I answered. You already perhaps have answer to this question. So it's actually a debatable thing.
That there is rise of products with the clean label ingredient.
Yeah.
So, because many of the companies or the regulatory body have taken this point into consideration, that the addition of the additives is nowadays creating a means that risk to human health, which is unknown and unaware, and it's not that experimented,
Yes.
well documented in the
Yes.
literature.
Yeah.
But nowadays, what the regulations are doing, that they are promoting, or they are making the regulations or rules for those products which will be clean labeled ingredient.
Yeah.
Right, means the ingredient which has been used in the manufacturing of that particular product,
Yeah.
that has not been means that is sustainable,
Yeah.
that has not created any cruelty to the environment and
Yeah.
the animal as well.
Animal life. Yeah.
There are some acts related to this, and
Yeah.
they are going on. Means there is research and development.
Development in that particular area. But yeah, that's a valid point here. Is I think in my personal, it's my opinion. I don't talk it as a scientist. I personally don't believe that ingredient. I mean, the processing is, according to me, good. You need to process to a certain extent everything, because unprocessed food are actually sometimes dangerous, because we process, we ferment it, we germinate it, we cook it, we boil it. It's all the part of food processing basically. If you don't do that, you basically damage things and your body. And then ingredients, sometimes we need to add some ingredients. I know the biggest challenge is that when you look into the plant-based, the ingredient list, the number of E numbers is a lot, and lot of too many things, emulsifier, lecithin, that, this, too many things they're adding. But the question is, are they really bad? And I don't think there is a lot of research in that particular area to say. But the one thing I want to mention to you as scientists, that don't believe in one or two research articles that say this is bad, because they are actually focusing on one particular organism, one particular food product, one particular study. We need to read a lot of articles and make a consolidated knowledge. We need to have these random controlled studies. We need to have an epidemiological study. We need to take thousands of people in the population to find out there is really an effect or not. Unless and until it's very difficult to say it's dangerous, it's bad. No. We are in that particular stage at the moment. More research is going on, maybe more evidence will come. I maybe the clean labeling is the future. I don't know, but there is something going on. I fully agree.
The need to extract proteins from alternatives, from alternate sources, as they are edible. Most of these grains are edible as such.
Yeah.
Why we need to extract it to add more price on them?
Good question. What he's telling that you can cook dal and eat dal curry, dal rice. Why you want to get proteins from dal and make a meat analog out of it, then eat along with the rice? That is his question. Valid question. That's also my personal question. However, human tongue is a different thing. Everybody have a different perception. I believe in environment, but not necessarily my father. My father really wants to eat fish, right? Then I can't tell him that, okay, you don't eat fish, it's environmental. Let's say chicken. I just give an example. He likes chicken. I cannot say them, okay, you stop eating chicken. He would say, okay, I'll stop eating chicken, but I really want to get the chickeny thing in my mouth at least once a week. This is a human's feeling, tongue, right? I really have a feeling, basically. If I don't eat non-veg 1 week, I mean, I really feel that today I want to eat chicken, that feeling, right? But to satisfy that, we need to create an ingredient. That's a big market. That's a big business, because food is not just food. It's also market, business, and everything is located. A lot of employment is also is located with this one. So, considering the different market, different consumer lifestyle, basically it's important to have a variety of foods. And that's the reason why the ingredients are needed. For example, let's take an infant formula, just to give an example. Every baby cannot bring the breast milk, right? Every baby is not possible. You need to have an infant formula with powders, proteins powder, lactose inside it, with a lot of minerals, a lot of fat, and so on. How do we get that one? Okay, we have milk. Now I say that milk is bad. Then you need to look for an alternative. Maybe use soy, maybe you infect, maybe use microalgae. I don't know. We need that product. So actually, there is some need to get products rather than the whole food. And there, it's important to get the ingredients out, basically the proteins out of a given matrix. And ingredients will give you a different functionality. She was talking about emulsification. You don't get good emulsification if you take pea flour compared to pea protein isolate. And there, basically, the getting things out of them is very important. However, I fully agree, if we believe that I don't care about my taste, my perception, I just care about environment, then I strongly agree that we should not do any processing, try to eat whole food, in the sense that less processing or no processing, minimally processed food. That's really important. I fully agree. And there, the local sourcing, local food culture, everything matters. It's a good question, but very difficult to apply for the whole world, to be frank.
Are plant proteins really cheap?
That's a good question. So I deleted that slide, actually, considering the time. Plant proteins are cheap in some cases. For example, if I'm not wrong, soy protein concentrates are not that expensive. They are available in bulk. Some specialized plant proteins are a bit expensive, but the plant products, we went to US, I'm telling, I was checking the price. Actually, they are really equally priced. In some cases, they are maybe 20% higher than the the animal-based food products, but in many cases, they are equally priced. I think several years ago, basically, they were twofold higher than the animal or milk-based products, but now they are actually somewhere equal. I give one example. I think IKEA is a furniture store. It's a Scandinavian furniture store. It's also in India now. IKEA actually sells food actually in their restaurant. And there was an IKEA guy who gave a talk in our university, and he mentioned to us that they have a plant-based sausages, and they also have a normal meat sausage. They said that okay, it maybe it's a little bit expensive to produce, but they actually kept the same price, or sometimes lower price, just to promote the consumers. But it actually worked out really well. And it's also important that when you start consuming more and more, things becomes cheaper. Just to take a TV as an example, 30 years ago, TV was costing so expensive, but now TV is damn cheap. Mobile phone, so expensive, now it's damn cheap. Things will also change. It's more about the demand and supply, and the price will go down. But the biggest challenge is, I can tell you one more challenge. It might have a problem with some part of the world. I can give one example. We make idli with urud dal, just to say. But urud dal is a bit expensive. Now imagine I send all urud dal to Europe or America to create protein ingredients. Urud dal becomes super expensive in India, and our local people will have a problem. I can give a example of the mango. The best mango I can get in the Europe, not in my hometown, right? This just exported, and there is actually a problem. These things has to be politically investigated. I don't want to talk about that in the camera, but there is a problem, and there's a good side and the bad side.
So, plant proteins, when we extract them, they do not have a requisite this solubility.
Yeah.
Their solubility is too low. They cannot be employed in any case or any application.
Yes.
So for that, we do modification by using different techniques, but modification is too expensive.
Yes.
So when we add any modification, then they becomes more costlier than traditional proteins or animal proteins.
Yeah, good question. However, there is already a sustainable, the LCA calculation, life cycle assessment calculations. They consider everything starting from the production until the consumption. If you make this LCA calculation, there is a clear evidence clearly shows that even if you do a number of processing, still plant-based proteins are much, much environmentally friendly compared to animals, even if you modify them, because their production itself has a lower carbon compared to plant-based. When you sum everything, it's still sustainable. I know it's more expensive in this processing and other things, but if you consider thing as a whole, it's still a minor part.
Literature available related the traces while we extract proteins.
Yeah.
Related the traces present in the protein isolates or protein concentrates.
Yeah.
So there is no, I think there's very less literature available.
True. Yeah, I think this is something people are actually now considering. That so-called, I mentioned just now, LCA calculation, life cycle assessment, cost calculation, energy input. Everything is being done at the moment slowly to find out how much energy we need to do the processing, how much carbon footprint you have if you just to crush, if you just to add hexane to extract oil. What is the problem? Everything is being considered, but I fully agree with you that the literature is bit less. But I see emerging evidence to show the carbon footprint for the plant-based protein processing. There are some papers at the moment. Yeah.
Phenolics, if they are present, they are someone told that phenolics are good, but they are not good in every case. Sometimes they attach with proteins, they make their digestibility very less.
Yes.
So the we can, although we consume it, but they are not digestible as such.
Absolutely, yeah. I will cover these topics. It's a good question. In the next coming slides, I have exactly those points. I'll talk about extraction, good thing and bad thing of the extractions, and so on, and the digestibility concerns. Okay.